Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. We're super excited to have you here. My name is Dr. Laura Pachenko, and I'm the Professional Development Coordinator at San Diego Miramar College. And with us today is Dr. Ryan Watkins. So I have been seeing so much out there about this thing called ChatGPT. I open emails all the time, and I am constantly being being shown headlines about what does this mean for plagiarism and what's going to happen in our classes, and is art going to be created from AI from now on? All of these like really, really large and potentially scary questions. And I thought, okay, what do I do, right? So as a faculty member, how do I move forward? What do I do with this? How can I understand it better? And how can I not fear it, right? How can I think about how to engage with it? So I did a very quick search, and what came up was a really wonderful article by Dr. Ryan Watkins. And on a whim, I thought, I don't know, I found his email address. Let me see if I can reach out and see if he'd be interested. And Dr. Watkins was incredibly gracious and immediately agreed to come and do a professional development workshop for us on this very topic. So major thanks to him for doing this. A little bit of background on Dr. Watkins. So he's a professor at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., co-host of the Parsing Science podcast, and developer of the We Share Science platform. He teaches educational technology leadership, an MA program, and human technology collaboration, a PhD program, and his research is on how we define and assess needs. So I'm going to hand it over to him now and enjoy the session.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for getting up early to join us. So as Laura said, I'm Ryan Watkins. I'm a professor at George Washington University. We live in Virginia, just outside of DC. And I've been at GW since 2001. I met my wife here. She teaches clinical psychology. So I guess we're a GW family through and through. We'll see if our kids end up at GW at some point. We have two boys there in 9th and 6th grade. So as Laura said, I teach ed tech. My background is in instructional design, and my research area is in needs and needs assessment. But I also do a lot of work with technology and technology development. So I develop websites and work with students on developing machine learning research and fun things like that. So I've been following the ChatGPT conversation closely. In our research lab, we had been using the predecessor technology, which they called GPT-2 and then GPT-3. And then they put it into this chat format and they called it ChatGPT. Though I think technically they refer to it as 3.5. But it's been exciting to watch. They released this new technology in late November, the last day of November. So about the 1st or the 2nd, I started seeing it pop up everywhere. And I said, this is kind of interesting. I should take a look and see what they've done to improve on what they had before. So just to give you an idea, so their first model that was released to the public was GPT-2, and that was in 2019, I believe. We used it some. It was interesting. It wasn't all that exciting. It produced text about like maybe an early elementary school student. So that was GPT-2. Then GPT-3 came out in, I believe, late 2021. And it produced text about what I'd say like my middle school student at the time would. So it's interesting that it had changed so much in a relatively short amount of time. So last summer we are using this third version, GPT-3. middle school level writing. We were interested following along with it. Then this one comes out at the beginning of December, and I'm looking at it, playing with it. I'm like, oh, this is really quite good. I feed it our master's level comps exam questions. It easily would have passed those questions, writing as well as a lot of our master's students would. So it's definitely producing college level type of prose at this point. And that's, I think, where a lot of people started to pay attention to it more as they played with it. So these were just some of the headlines that you may have seen. The Atlantic article, I think, caught a lot of people's attention. Is the college essay really dead? I am not sure. I'm not sure also how much we should be relying on it in the first place. So maybe it really wasn't the tool that we should have been going to in order to assess student learning and knowledge. So there's been a lot of talk about it. And we've done a session at GW. I did a session very similar to this for my colleagues here last week. And then when I got Laura's email, I said, oh, perfect. I can reuse some of the things that I've done. I can talk to a different audience and hopefully help other people kind of start to see how this can be used. Like most technologies, I think there will be positive uses and there will be negative uses. So how can we encourage the positive uses and try to mitigate against the not so positive uses? It's kind of been my approach to it. As Laura mentioned, I wrote a blog post about this mid-December for a blog channel called Medium, and it's been picked up by quite a few people. So it's been exciting to see that people are becoming very aware of this technology. And I think first and foremost, that's what I hope today's session can help all of us become more aware of the technology and maybe not making decisions about how we will use it and when it is appropriate. It's probably too early to decide exactly what our policies and ethical frameworks and thoughts about this should be, but at least we can start having those conversations with our colleagues and most importantly with our students, so they understand what the technology is, when it's appropriate to use, how it can benefit them, and what are some of the negative aspects to it that they should try to avoid. Not everyone has probably had a chance to use the system. It is free, and you just have to sign up with OpenAI, which is a software company, I guess, kind of a software company, a tech startup based out of California and the Bay Area, heavily supported early on through Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and other supporters of a lot of these big AI type companies. Microsoft is now one of their biggest supporters, and Microsoft is planning to do more integration with them and build it into their Bing search engine and build it into Word and other applications. So this is not going away. It's just going to continue to end up in more and more parts of our life. And it may not be this company's version of what this is. And I'll talk more about what it is and what's running in the background after I show some examples. But it's important to understand that there are several of these being released in the coming weeks. Google has been working on these, Meta, formerly Facebook, has been working on these, Amazon has similar, and of course, there are a number of other smaller players who also are developing these models. So just to give everyone an example, so this is the interface system that they currently have released. And again, you can sign up on their website and get free access. They do track what you're doing, and they use that to improve the system at this point in time. But if you're not comfortable with giving your data to another tech company, then you may or may not want to create an account with them. So let me show this video. So I put in a prompt. They call these prompts, these small sentences. So I asked it here to write some Python code to get YouTube videos. I do a lot of code writing with my students, so this was one of the first ones I wanted to try to see how good at writing code would it be. And as it turns out, it writes pretty good code. This isn't necessarily the way I would have written the code to do this task, but in some ways it's probably more efficient than how I would have written it. And it does it quickly, so that's also fairly impressive. Now, a lot of us don't teach computer science and related topics. So once it's finished, I will go back. This is all pre-recorded, by the way. I've learned long ago not to trust live demonstrations with technology. But I'll go, actually, I'd gone to one slide too far. So I'll go back a slide. And I'll have it play this one. So I also asked it to provide a 300-word summary of the 3 primary causes of the French Revolution as compared to causes of the American Revolution. So as you can see, it's creating text very quickly. It's talking about the financial crisis in France at the time, the social inequality, the political corruption within the French monarchy. And then it starts to do the contrast of what were the causes of the American, the taxation issues without representation, something my 6th grader is actually studying this week. Restrictions on trade and movement, desire for autonomy. And it's producing all of this fairly quickly. Some of it is more accurate than other parts of it. This is pretty accurate, but many people have posted to Twitter and other places inaccuracies and the information it provides. So I think that's one of the reasons we have to have lots of conversations with students, is to help them understand that this is not necessarily accurate information. Often it's not. It will make up sources. It will sound very confident. I had one colleague who does research in psychology, and he was amazed at what it produced. And then it produced, it said that this psychological phenomenon is actually assessed using a tool by author such and such, first referenced in 1993 or something like that. And he said, oh, I'm an expert in this field, and I've never heard of this assessment instrument that they're saying is the most popular for assessing this psychological construct. So he looked it up and he couldn't find it. And he looked up the journal that they said it in, and it turns out the journal never even existed. So neither the authors nor the journal actually existed, but it referenced it and just completely made it up because it can do that. It can sound authoritative without necessarily being accurate. So I'll show another example. So in this, I asked it to, oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button. Play that one again. So here I asked it to give me an outline for a presentation on Chinese investments in Kenya, a topic I know nothing about. Just to see how it would do at outlining a presentation and how that might be a useful use of this for me when I'm giving talks. I didn't use it for this. I guess I could have, and asked it for an outline of what this talk should have entailed. I could see this again being a very useful tool for students. Sometimes staring at the blank sheet of paper or the blank slide in PowerPoint can be very intimidating. And if this can help them think through what their outline might be for a presentation in class and reduce some of that stress, I would see that as a positive. Now, they have to apply their own thinking on top of this. Though in theory, and this is where the negative use comes in, you could also go back and ask it to write about what are the challenges faced by Chinese investors in Kenya, and write the information for you Again, it may not be accurate, but it will do it. And I think I have one more example that I'll show. So it can also do fun things like write poetry. This is actually one I did with my mom. I was talking with my mom, who's 80 this year, and we were talking about interesting applications of it. And so we asked it to write a poem about butterflies, and we asked the ChatGPT to do this in the voice of Winston Churchill, so that it would use things out of his type of style of speech. And it's a pretty entertaining poem. So, hark, hear ye my words, let us unite for these creatures and for our future. So it could do a lot of fun things. One of my kids used it to write a rap song, and then he was singing it around the house. So there's a variety of interesting, fun ways that you can apply this technology. I've already seen a similar technology. It doesn't actually use ChatGPT to my understanding, but they have their own model that runs in an app where you can talk with historical figures. They do warn you at the beginning that you should fact check all the information. But I went in and I chatted with Martha Washington to see how it was living with George Washington. And I chatted with Robert Kennedy and asked him about his relationship with his brother, JFK. So there's lots of new ways that this is going to be used going forward. That can be fun, exciting. It won't always be accurate. And I think that's what students have to realize. But the accuracy will get better over time. I did read research where Google is already working on a layer that sits on top of this that goes back and fact checks for you, so that it'll use the same underlying models, but it will fact check and improve the quality of the information coming out on the other end. Which is probably a great transition from kind of seeing what it does to talking about what's actually going on. So artificial intelligence is defined in many ways in the literature, and there's many different schools of thought, I would say, on what makes something an artificial intelligence. I would say at this point, it's kind of a misnomer to call what we have systems as artificial intelligence. But this definition, I think it would fit. And that is that artificial intelligence is the science and engineering of making computers behave in ways that, until recently, we thought required human intelligence. And I think ChatGPT falls into this category of what we would call artificial intelligence. As you can see, the prose that it produces, up until recently, we thought required human intelligence. We didn't see animals doing this. So we thought this was something that only humans could do in terms of creating this type of a product. But is that really intelligence? Is the question that we have to ask. So what makes something intelligent is something that we don't have clear answers about. I mean, up until recently, the things that mimicked what we would have classified of its intelligence really were humans and people. And we hadn't thought, I mean, in science fiction, I guess they had thought, but we hadn't really explored other types of intelligences in that many different ways. So again, the key idea behind AI at this point is machines that can mimic or reproduce the cognitive things that we do as humans. So our perception, our reasoning, they're very good at reasoning, decision making. And they can do this without necessarily being human-like in their overall intelligence. And this is actually the response that ChatGPT gave to this question. So I think it's interesting that ChatGPT gives these types of responses to us, which might also then make us infer that it is intelligent, when it is not intelligent in the way that we think of intelligence and human intelligence. So that begs the question, then, what is it? So there's a field of computer science called machine learning. It's been around for 20 years, I believe. It's really picked up steam, though, in the last decade when we've had better computing power and other advancements in coding and so forth. And this is the part of computer science that's looking at programming our digital computers to behave in a way which, if done by humans or animals, we would describe the process as learning. And this idea has been around for a long time, that computers can behave in a way that would appear to be learning. Now, that said, when we talk about machine learning, you can think of it more as a metaphor, the learning part of it. The machine is doing something that we might describe as learning, but it's still, it all comes down to ones and zeros. I mean, this is a computational process. It's doing lots of statistics, very, very complex stuff. Would we call that learning if it was done within humans? Probably not. But it seems to be a good metaphor, and the term machine learning sticks well for it. And that's exactly what ChatGPT and these other, what we call large language models, are doing. They're creating statistical representations of words that they call tokens and the relationship among those tokens across millions and billions of uses. So if you think of a word, we could take the word digital, and all the times that it is used on the internet and in books and in articles and any place that it might appear, it's taking that word as a token, the word digital, and it's determining what is the probability of the word that should follow. If the word that follows with the highest probability within this context is computer, then it will put the word computer up. It's not actually putting meaning behind any of those. It's using statistics to figure out what is the probability within the context of the question and the user, what word should follow after another word, which is absolutely amazing to me still. When I watch it print stuff out, and it's doing all that so quickly, and it's all customized to me. Again, you have to sign up with an account, so it knows what I've asked before, and it's using that to fine tune down to what it should tell me as a user. After you've used it, and you've used it some, it will start being customized to you, and we could ask the exact same thing and get slightly different answers because the probabilities are different of what word should follow the previous word between the two of us. So when this gets really exciting now is we have machine learning, and now most recently we have what we call generative AI, or what some people call creator AI. So this is a branch of the general AI area within computer science focused on creating content. As we saw, it can create text quite quickly and quite well for our prompts. It can also, though, create images. Video is coming. Google has released in research where they do animations that you use text to describe what you want, and it will create an animation of that. And it can create audio from your text prompt. So these AI systems are trained on large data sets as well. So one of the more famous ones is Stable Diffusion. The company that does ChatGPT also has a model for pictures, which is called DALL-E, D-A-L-L-E. And you can go in and use that too. It's currently open on beta. And what they've done is take large data sets of pictures that are online somewhere, and they put them into a model to show what are the relationships of colors and stuff and images that have been labeled. And then you can create you can create prompts to create images. So the 3 images at the bottom are what I would consider to be very well done AI art. There's lots of AI art out there that looks very cartoonish, and it's like a cat standing on top of the planet Jupiter, and it's raining, and that's fairly easy to create. But this is actual art that was done by AI artists. There was an artist who won a competition last summer using an AI program, and that caused all kinds of issues in the art community that you can read about. There's lots and lots of blogs about this. There are lawsuits, of course, related to how they trained the models, and artists weren't notified that their images were being used. And there's ethical debates that come out of this. So there'll be legal and ethical challenges to all of this as well. As you can imagine, if you're an artist and your art was included in this data set, then you may not be too happy about that. But then I think the tech companies come back and they say, well, does an artist talk about every picture they've seen in a museum and give them credit for the art that they've created? And I kind of understand that justification too. I mean, if these images are out there on websites and people can look at them, if I go and paint something after seeing it, is that any different than the AI model creating art after seeing it, quote, seeing it as well? Of course, it doesn't really see it. It analyzes it for pixels and ones and zeros. So there's a couple more terms that you'll hear, and I think they help build context for what it's actually doing. So again, ChatGPT is a language version of this. It's been trained on an enormous corpus of writing. Many, I mean, the whole of Wikipedia is in there, I guess. Thousands of millions of websites. Google also has Google Books, so I'm sure they're training theirs. There's actually a really nice app you can use with Google Books where it uses one of their early models, and you can do a search for a book, or you can do a search for a topic, and it will bring you back quotes out of books where that topic has been discussed. It's in beta testing. If you go into Google Books, I believe there's a link at the bottom for it. Or if you do a search, you'll find it. It's pretty interesting to see how they're using these models to help you find the books that you're looking for. So again, these are language models. They're what we call neural networks. And that's just a way of saying how the data is examined, and statistics are used to determine what characters are related to what other characters. This is used a lot, for example, in text recognition. So what letter is an A? How do you separate an A from a B? That's what neural networks are really, really good at. And it's trained on massive amounts of data, and that's where it gets good. Now you may ask yourself, if it's trained on all the data of the internet, is some things filtered in and some things left out? Like, how do they control for hate speech? There's a lot of hate speech on the internet. How did they not do that? And I think this is one of the interesting ethical areas that we're going to have to struggle with is, of course, OpenAI as a company didn't want their chat program to spew a bunch of hate speech every time you put something in. So they had to choose what goes in and what does not go into their model. Now, some of the decisions they make we're quite happy with, like the hate speech, for example, we're probably happy with. But they probably made other decisions that we would not be as happy knowing that certain things were left out of the model that we might think are important to have included. And of course, other countries are going to develop models. So what will the Chinese models look like? What will China leave out of their training data in order to manipulate the information that's output from the model? And who has a say in how those decisions are made and why they should be made? And what we do when there are models that are filled with hate speech because people who want to promote hate speech spend the money to create the model? From what I've read online, there's not a lot of information, but these cost 30 to 40 million to create. And that's just in the computing power. That's not even including the salaries of the people doing it. But just if you do the computing power, it's about 30 to 40 million of comp time in order to actually produce one of these models. So lots of ethical things will be coming up in the near future about this, I'm sure. So there are some limitations. It doesn't have context. It's not intelligent in that way, like we might think of human intelligence. It has no domain knowledge, so it is not an expert in nanotechnology or 15th century British history. It doesn't have that type of content knowledge. It's very broad. It has no common sense. It's just using probabilities to put words together. So it will do some very odd things at times. It lacks creativity. It has the biases of the things that it read, as well as the bias of the people who decided what it should and should not read into their model. So there's a lot of bias questions about how these things are developed. Some of the biases we appreciate, some of them we may not be as happy about. The last thing I saw with political bias, so when it first came out early December, people gave it political bias tests, and it was leaning heavily liberal, like libertarian liberal, and to the left. Now it tends to be doing the same test now, it tends to fall more into a middle ground. So people are watching it to see how the responses are politically, of course, and how that may or may not influence people who are using it to have those types of political views. And of course, there are technical limitations. You can only do so much with this technology. But it is very impressive, as you saw. It gives great writing, the prose. I mean, if you think about students where English might be a second language, how this might be useful to them in terms of improving grammar, punctuation, spelling, because they can start to see how a system that does much better with grammar and style can produce content as well. It's very interesting in terms of engagements. It can be very interacting. The idea of talking with historical figures is just intriguing. But there are 1,000 other similar ideas that people are working on now. You can personalize it. You can do a lot of really interesting things. One of my colleagues was talking about how she's going to try to use it later this semester to generate more variety of questions in her quizzes. So while she might sit down and write 5 questions for a quiz, she's going to ask it to write 5 of each question, like of each topic area, different questions, so that she can pull from a random pool to give the quiz, because it can do that type of stuff very quickly. You could ask it to give you 10 questions on a topic, and then you choose 3 of those to put into your question pool. So there's lots of different ways that I think teachers can use it, students can use it. But as the Chinese word for crisis says, there's both danger and opportunity. And I think we always want to be aware of that, that there are challenges. This is likely to be a disruptive innovation in many, many parts of our lives, and our students' lives. And I think it can be disruptive in a very positive way. If we're not careful, though, it could be disruptive in a very negative way. I think that social media has taught us that most recently, though other technologies have taught us that in the past. There's a lot of great things that come from having social media. If we look at the anxiety level of teenagers, we also start to see there are some potential downsides to having social media. in the hands, especially of young people. So as one of my colleagues pointed out, it's very good at doing synthesis of information, but we don't want to confuse synthesis for critical thinking. If we want our students to think critically about things, it has to go beyond what a system like this could do. And I would suggest that that's what we want for our students. If we can create a system, a computer program that can do the things we're teaching them to do, then those things might not be the most valuable things for us to teach them to do. So how can we think about this for helping students build metacognitive skills, thinking about their learning? How can we use it to improve our educational practices? There aren't clear answers to this. We're 6 weeks into having this technology. The conversations are just getting started. People are starting to experiment. I think over the next 6 months, we'll get lots and lots of ideas. In my article that I posted back in December, I offered some just as ways to get started. I'm trying those out this semester for the first time because they came out at the end of the semester. So actually this morning I posted my first assignment where I'm requesting students use ChatGPT to get the base of what information I want them to know. And then I'm having them move it into Google Docs and use comments to expand and to improve. So they're gonna use comments and track changes to take the base of what ChatGPT could provide for them and use their other resources, our textbook and other tools I've given them to expand on that knowledge. So what I'd like to do at this point is we're gonna go into small groups. We ended up with quite a large group from what I can see. So we're gonna go into small groups and give you about 12 to 15 minutes to talk as a group about some of the opportunities that you see with this, some of the challenges, how you think you might take this information and move forward with your colleagues and hopefully with your students as well. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh, we do have a large group. I didn't realize we had gotten up to 132. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make, I guess, I'll do 23 breakout rooms. And it will assign you automatically into your breakout rooms. And I will post the questions into the discussion. And you should see those within your breakout rooms as well. Okay. So welcome back, everyone. Great to have everyone back. Hopefully the conversations were useful. I was in group 18 and they were having some great conversations around the tool, how we think about motivating our students to ensure that they actually want to learn, focus on the learning rather than just on the product that comes out at the end, which a system could probably provide. And we talked about using this in a variety of different instructional settings. I did also, there were a couple of comments and questions around tools for knowing whether or not AI has contributed the text. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. So there was one that came out in late December. It got a lot of press, created by a student at Princeton. Did that, I guess, what am I sharing?
We're, it's not full screen right now.
Oh, but you see that, okay. There we go.
There we go, perfect.
So this is the tool that came out, and this is using a variety of different types of methods to try to check it. I'll just play the video. So I inserted into this tool the results of the first question I had shown the video of, or the second, around what were the causes of the French Revolution compared to the American Revolution. So it is checking it, it's doing something called perplexity scoring. As you see, it will give you information. So perplexity has something to do with the types of words that it's using. And then it gives you a result at the end. Let's see where the result comes up. Click the button. It gives you a score, basically. So you can see there the score of 285. It came back and said that this was likely, oh, there it goes. This was likely developed by an AI system. So actually it said, huh, that's strange. So then I took the same text and I ran it through a website called paraphraser.io. And there are many tools out there that do paraphrasing, which students have used for several years now to cheat in different ways. So I put in the same, I put the text into the paraphraser and then put the paraphrase text into here. And the scores dropped substantially. If I remember right, I did this last week. So if I remember right though, it came up like, the first time it came up with a score of 84, and now the score after being paraphrased drops down into the 30s. So with just the use of a simple paraphrasing tool, the ability of these systems to recognize that something was created by a chat bot or a ChatGPT bot is very low. Yeah, and there you see the score dropped down to 34. So yeah, there are tools. I'm sure it'll be a game of cat and mouse where someone will develop a tool and then people will find a way around that tool quite quickly in order, if they want to cheat, they'll find a way around the tools in order to cheat. We've seen this with Turnitin. We've seen it with all the different types of systems. So there are going to be struggles in that area. I think none of us want to stick our head in the sand and deny that that's going to happen. But we have to figure out how to work in an era where these tools will be readily available. I saw that New York City public schools are banning it, the IP address from their servers, which I guess is helpful, but you can also do a Google add-in that will add it into your Chrome browser. And then it actually doesn't go through that IP, it goes through a different IP to get it. And it shows up next to your Google results. So if you Google something right next to where Google results are, ChatGPT will give you its response to the same thing. So blocking the IP might thwart some very basic students, make them think twice. But for those who want to cheat, they will easily find their way around that type of blocking system. And of course, they have it on their phone. They have it on any non-school issued computer. If they're on any other network, they can go to the same IP address. So it's going to be a challenge. I know that in ed tech, we're busy looking at a lot of these different issues. So my take has been, we probably have to go with it and teach our students how to use it wisely and appropriately. And when they get out into the workplace, they're going to have it. And it's a skill that employers will want them to have. They'll want them to be able to use it to do work more efficiently. And so we want to prepare them for that, not try to keep them in an age where they don't have. Just like once calculators were put into the classroom, students were using them already out in the real world. So why would we not teach them how to use a calculator? Which was the big debate when I was a math education major as an undergrad. People were still debating, should we have calculators in the classroom? Someone did ask a question about the animation. So the animation tool is still not publicly released by Google. You can go to their site. It's like the word imagine and engine combined together at .google.com. So it's like imagine.google.com, I believe. And they show some examples of it. There are some research papers on Archive. Archive is a preprint server where a lot of computer science, physics, and other people post their early non-published yet research projects. And Google researchers are very good about posting their stuff there. Google has been very transparent, I would say, for being Google and what they are about their development of these. Probably even more so than OpenAI, even though OpenAI started out being this nonprofit open about AI, but they've been fairly limited in providing information about how they develop their models, what data they left out, what data they put in. But Google, it's my understanding, they're holding to release their products until they're sure they work the way they want them to. Of course, they have a lot of reputational risk involved. If a Google product comes out and starts using a bunch of hate language and curse words and stuff, Google has a lot of money on the line. Whereas a company like OpenAI, they can put a beta out there. It's mostly researchers who are first aware of it. They have less risk involved. That's why Microsoft funds them rather than calling it a Microsoft product. Though I think they're going to invest 10 billion over the next 5 years or something into OpenAI. So it's pretty much going to be Microsoft under the guise of OpenAI is my take. Laura, are there any other questions you picked up on that we should try to answer while we have people?
Well, this may be a much larger question, but there were a number of questions about the ethics behind all of this. There were some concerns about art creation, and I don't know, again, I know it's kind of a very large question, but if there's anything you want to speak to around that.
Well, you put some great resources. Do you want to bring up your site and you can show them the site you're developing? As they see things, they can send it to you, I assume, to get posted there. But you have a tab for AI and ethics. And we have there's a good journal called AI and Ethics where people are writing lots of journal articles about these issues. I'm actually currently taking a class through the Center for AI and Digital Policy, CAIDP, on policy related to this. So it's a class on how to analyze policy related to AI. I figured it's something I should probably know about and think about how ed policy is impacted by this. And it's just a flood of information these days with the EU, with OECD, with the UN, all issuing edicts about it. NSF just released something new today on the national AI strategy. There's a lot going on around ethics. I don't think anyone has clear answers about ethics in these terms. How do we think about these systems? What are the ethical implications? Just run so deep. Yeah, it's challenging to say the least. Yeah, I read a good blog this morning that was, oh, sorry, you were gonna put the website up. Did you do that, by the way?
Is it not sharing?
Oh, maybe, I don't see it. I see you. Are you sharing your screen?
Is anyone seeing?
Yeah, we can see your screen. It says AI and Ethics.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh no, I thought the entire time I was showing.
Maybe because I'm co-host, I don't see it.
Yeah, yeah. But yes.
So as I was saying, I was reading an interesting blog today about how ChatGPT and its use of correlational combining of words changes how we think about knowledge, and that we're potentially have to think about are we leaving a paradigm where science created a lot of knowledge, kind of like we moved from theology to science with the Enlightenment? Are we potentially moving to a time when people look more to data to create knowledge than to science and research to create knowledge? And how we may or probably don't want that, but we might. I mean, it's societies. So I mean, there are people putting some pretty big thoughts out there about how this changes how we think about a variety of ethical issues, how we think about knowledge in our epistemologies. Where does knowledge come from? Clearly, I don't think ChatGPT produces new knowledge. It produces something that is very interesting and simulates what some people may misperceive as creating knowledge, but it's not. It's just correlations of words put together. It's amazing to me, though. And that's kind of the funny thing. I'm absolutely amazed by it. I love playing with it. It's much better than Googling things. It's much more entertaining. But I also have a healthy amount of fear of what it could do to us in our society.
Hey,
and
question,
our students. Yep.
It knows that you're like a researcher, so could it like target you? Does that make sense? Like it knows that you're a researcher, bro. So could it target you, like, and study your inputs more carefully?
It probably could. Yeah, I mean, it's a computer system. It's capable of all these things. Now, I don't know why OpenAI would want to do that. But obviously, if you think of a company of Google or Microsoft or someone else, they're going to try to monetize it. They're making huge investments. Again, 30 to 40 million just of computer time to build. It costs them, early estimates were anywhere from like 100 to 150,000 a day to keep it running. And that's when there were only 1 million, 2 million users, and they're well over that now. But by giving it away, they're getting it into people's hands. People are going to be willing to pay to have this service. And so it's a brilliant marketing scheme to give it away at first. When I use the previous model for my research and stuff, you pay per token, which is semi like per word. But I think even like when we would run a small study, at most it would cost us like $4 or $5. So it's cheap to use. It's not going to be expensive. And once competition sets in, the price will probably go down even as other people offer more models. And they'll offer models to specific fields. Like I can imagine there'll be models that trained on more engineering related content than other content. And it will do amazing engineering things that we haven't even thought of yet. So I think there'll be competition among models. But then there'll be the large general models that probably Google, Microsoft, Meta will probably get a lot of the use because they're big, powerful companies. Again, I think that, thank Laura for putting this together. Hopefully this just raises all of our awareness. Again, this is more about raising awareness than providing answers at this point. And I think that we as teachers want to start these conversations with our students, if nothing else, to make sure they know that we know that we're looking for this, so that they don't think we have our heads in the sand and they're pulling one over on us. But also to talk about what are the ethics and what should they do? What is appropriate use? How might they encounter this in their future workplaces? What skills do they have to develop in order to have employable skills going forward in whatever domain they're working within?
Thank you so much to Ryan. If we could all maybe just very quickly unmute and just do a group thank you, that would be amazing. 1,
Thank you. Oops.
2,
Thank you.
3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
as well.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Love it so much. Again, so gracious to agree to do this. Not having met me before, Ryan has been absolutely amazing to work with over the past week on this, and I've learned so much from him about this. So a major thank you. If you all could take a moment, we would so appreciate if you could complete the evaluation survey. There's a tab for this up at the top of the website that we shared. It means a lot for us to get some feedback on the event and so that we can continue doing future professional development opportunities in the future. Thank you all so much for coming today. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Can we I have a question. Can you like what was written in the chat? Could you send that to